Kansas Jayhawks are about to get the worst NCAA tournament seed of the entire Bill Self era, and it won't even be close. But Houston, baby, they rolling.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Happy Tuesday. Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, joining me at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you so much for making us your first listen or watch of the day. And I want to remind you that you can catch every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out to all the everydayers checking in with us. And of course, all the great members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. Coming up on the show today, we got our guy Parker Ainsworth, the host of Locked On Cougs, fresh off a sweep of the Kansas Jayhawks. We're going to get into Duke's demolishment, if that's a word, of Wake Forest. UCLA holding on, and I do mean holding on, against Northwestern. And guess what? It's Tuesday. It's another crazy Tuesday night slate. We got a couple ranked matchups, a whole bonkers bubble slate. And so we're going to get to all of that. But we got to start inside the Fertitta Center there in Houston. Parker, it's not true. I almost said number whatever Kansas, but they ain't ranked. Kansas.
No mas.
No mas. It's nuts. Kansas at number 4, Houston. Cougs hold on at home, 65-59. Didn't need a bonkers comeback this time. And Parker, where we got to start, man, senior night is just such a heavy emotional time every year. We get so attached to these young men and young women when we talk women's hoops. Yes, even in the transfer portal era. And Parker, that hug pregame between Juwan Roberts and Kelvin Sampson, all the emotion and 6 yearsness of it that went into it. Dude, I was, as a dad, we're both dads. Dude, I was done. I had nothing. What does that moment mean to you as the host of Locked On Cougs?
I mean, that's what this program is built on. And both those two men in that moment are like who built this in a lot of ways. And I don't mean to like take Malik Wilson and Javier Francis and Ramon Walker and LJ Cryer also all had big parts of making this program what it is. But they talked about it. I forget if it was, I think it was in the Post, but they're talking to Kelvin Sampson, and he's like, hey, it was the summer of 2018 and we were at Peach Jam and he was playing on a side court at 6'6", $185. Right. Like, and hey, he's playing really hard. Let's go watch that guy. And he's, class of 2019 kid with a red shirt and a COVID and a medical or whatever. He's, 6 years later is in this thing. And like his career tracks the program in that same span where they make the tournament, the Sweet 16s are all in his time there. Just a tremendous moment. And again, like what Sampson and Roberts have built together. He talked about him like a son in the when they won the Big 12 regular season outright over the weekend. Just a really special moment. And like Sampson's a tough guy. To get him trembling at the point of tears is like it's not easy, man. I mean, he coached his own son, and it didn't quite like his literal son in Oklahoma. And it didn't do that. Like, it tells you a lot about where he's at right now.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Well, Parker, we've buried the lead on the craziest news of the night. Jose Altuve is going to play left field for the Astros. What? No, I'm kidding. Honestly, that is crazy news. But seriously, per ESPN, Houston this season is just the third team ever to sweep Kansas in the Bill Self era, the others being the 17-18 Pokes of Oklahoma State and the 2021 Texas Longhorns. Parker, 7 games into this season, Houston was 4-3. They're 22-1 since that moment. My guy, did you at that moment in time, can you remember back to your thoughts and feelings about this team 7 games into the season?
I did feel like I was telling people to pump the brakes, but I am very much on the record that I told people in the offseason that like the team that won the Big 12 would probably have 3 or 4 conference losses, 20 games. It's a gauntlet. All the transfers into the conference. I thought Kansas State was going to be a lot different, all those kinds of things. And like, for what it's worth, if Houston had only lost 3 conference games, I guess they would still be in first. They just haven't. Like you mentioned, they haven't been trailing at the end of regulation since before football was over. Like that's how far back it goes. It's just crazy. I mean, it's been a blast to get to be a part of and watch and cover. I don't mean to say like it's kind of, you get caught up in like, oh yeah, they're just going to win every game. And like, no, they're not. like it's just silly. It's just silly.
And now they're going to win. You just referenced for the second year in a row, their first 2 years in this conference, they're going to win it yet again by multiple games. Parker, I mean, it is a crazy, crazy story and really, really good stuff by the Cougs. Let's hone in on this game and what made it what it was. Parker, I thought there were a couple key stats that really tipped the scales in favor of the Cougs, and that was turnovers and points off, and then the offensive rebounds and the critical role they played. Speak to, if you would, just how those two stats in particular really, really helped the Cougs pull this one off.
Yeah, turnovers. They forced 20 turnovers and had 18 points off of them. Houston only turned the ball over 6 times themselves. And then they got 17 extra possessions or 17 offensive rebounds. The funny thing is that actual total rebounding is a much closer it was 37-34. But the offensive rebounds, Houston just kept getting shots. And, but we talk about, Sampson and Roberts and the culture those guys have built at Houston. That's all that stuff is, right? Is playing defense. Malik Wilson did a great job coming over and doubling Hunter Dickinson and, forced a bunch of deflections and steals, making him a passer, jump passing lanes. But those guys rotate on a string when they're on defense, just all in sync with one another. It's really like if you're a guy that likes defensive basketball, I don't know how you'd get this far without having watched Houston, but it's a joy to watch. It's incredible.
Yeah, dude, I love a Greg Maddux 1-0 kind of game. That means I'm all in on a defensive basketball game. Yeah, I mean, this is crazy, Parker. And I thought that the end of the game was a perfect punctuation on these offensive rebounds. Houston's 3 final field goals, they offensive rebounded all 3 of those misses, the final 3 attempts. And perhaps none more important than LJ's putback that put the Cougs up 5 with just under 2 minutes to go. I mean, it was just crazy. And by 3 different players. It was LJ Cryer, it was Emmanuel Sharp, and it was Juwan Roberts. I mean, it's insane.
But in speaking of LJ's growth, if you went back to the summer of 22 and told someone in Waco at Baylor, hey, he's going to have a crucial offensive rebound and putback to beat Kansas, and they'd have laughed. That just wasn't what he did there. That just wasn't his role, his job. And Houston's elevated what he does, and it's just a cool way to get to watch.
Yeah, dude, it shows the maturity and what happens when you buy into what Coach Sampson is asking you to do. 26 more field goal attempts for Houston in this game. Crazy, crazy stuff. Parker, you and I were texting in the midst of this game, and you were just talking about how important it is for Houston to have both Milo Suzanne and LJ Cryer on the court at the same time. They had separate foul troubles in each of the 2 halves. Uzan played just 2 minutes and 58 seconds of the first half before picking up his second foul. And then LJ picks up his 4th with about 12 minutes to go in the second half. What do these guys need to do to be on the floor together? Obviously, the depth helps, right? You've got guards behind them in Arsenault and Sharp to help things out. But these guys are critical. What do they got to do to figure that out?
Yeah, I mean, a big thing, obviously, is like this is a bigger deal against the best teams, right? People kind of tend to forget when Houston played Auburn earlier this year. Houston lost by 5 at Toyota Center, but Milos fouled out with like 4.5 minutes to go in that game, and that Petaway kid went pretty crazy after that. So
he's so good, man.
Those things seem
incredible.
Credit the kid's crazy good. I just mean like those things seem to line up, right? I do think that you hope for a friendly whistle because they both do play aggressive. You don't want to coach that out of them, but honestly, also like. You don't want to make the dumb mistake foul because then the hustle foul like doubles it up or whatever. When they're both on the floor, Milos runs a great offense and LJ is, his gravity in a Steph Curry kind of sense. He's not Steph Curry, but the same kind of like pull, right?
I hear what you're saying. Absolutely.
It changes up what defenses can and can't do. You kind of have to have both of them against those top caliber teams. Like if they were to get to a Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four, etc., you're going to want them on the floor for about 38 minutes apiece, if not more. They're that important what Houston's doing.
Yeah. Well, and I tell you, when you get to the end of these games, we're switching from Uzan to Emmanuel Sharp, but he and LJ Cryer, Sharp and Cryer, folks, if you're not realizing this, have combined this season. I'm adding the stats in from the Kansas game. are a combined 133 for 145 from the free throw line. That's 91.7%. How insane does that help at the end of a game? I absolutely love it. And Parker, here's the moment in this show where Isaac Schade puts his hand up for a mea culpa and said, I say a couple weeks ago, my man, somebody had asked me, like, is Houston a Final Four ceiling team? And at that point, I said no. I just didn't see it. Why? Because to me, LJ Cryer was not Marcus Sasser or Jamal Schade. Like, he just hadn't fit that mold. But going back to that maturity we just talked about and his evolution in the Houston system, dude, he's done it. And since that moment, in my opinion, LJ has gone, well, I don't want to say nuclear. And now I stand here, a man convicted. Elite Eight is no longer the season, man. This is a national championship potential team. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm going to agree, right? But I think that the truth there is that there's going to be matchups and it's all one game samples and chaos. Like, if I'm being blunt, I think last year's team was too, and Jamal Schade turned his ankle and they didn't have the depth of this year's team. I think they've got depth this year, which will help. They're a lot healthier at this point in the season than they were last year too. Last year's team, Tugler had his broken foot and Arsenault has torn Achilles, right? So you're a little bit healthier at this point in the season. But we also have seen at our own detriment how like just one bad game or one bad turn can change a lot of things. You don't play a 7-game series in this tournament. I do think though it's the kind of team that is talented enough to do it. And it doesn't hurt that the Final Four is in San Antonio.
You know, that is not the worst thing ever. And I mean, legit, the offense was hot. Like the Cougs finished 19th in Ken Palm offensive efficiency last year. That's elite, but it's even more so this year. It's 8th right now as of once it's updated after the Kansas game, and that's big time. So look, Parker, looking ahead just briefly here, we got one game left in the regular season. For the Cougs, they close in Waco, funnily enough, for Mr. LJ, and then Kansas goes back to the Fog to host Arizona. I got to say, Parker, I feel like Houston is now secure on the one line along with Auburn and Duke. We're going to talk about both of them here in a second. And for Kansas, man, they're floating into 6-7 territory, I think. Should they lose this game to Arizona, they will be 500 or worse in conference play for the first time since Roy Williams' first season at the helm, 1988-89. Parker, it is crazy to see Kansas falling off in this way for them, you know?
Yeah, falling off as 500. But yeah, that's where they're at, right? That's where they're at.
Well, man, it's crazy. And so how are you feeling about Houston, one more regular season game and then the conference tournament? I thought some of those injuries last year caught up with the Cougs in the Big 12 tournament. Remember Iowa State? I hate to say it with a bunch of Houston fans tuned in here, but Iowa State embarrassed Houston in that championship game. What are you feeling about this closing slate before the NCAA tournament?
You know, again, gone on record at this point, I feel like I'm probably more in the camp of be healthy for the NCAA tournament than care about the conference tournament. Because honestly, if you're the 2 seed and Alabama's the 1 seed in your bracket, it's not a whole lot different than being the 1 seed with them being the 2 seed in your bracket. You're kind of in this flotation of like teams 3 through 6 and 7 kind of all feel in the same vein, and you're going to have to beat one of them anyway, just what color jersey you're wearing, right? And so I'd rather be healthy for that matchup. Now I will say I don't think that's what Sampson's going to do. He plays to win every game, and so I'd imagine you see those guys playing hard and playing a lot of minutes. Now, if Emmanuel Sharp's ankle's bugging him, will they pull him? Probably, but if he's suited up, he's going to play, right? And so I say that's what I would do, but Sampson's also a Hall of Fame coach. Who might have questioned that guy, right? That's not what I think he's going to do. So.
All right, guys, it was not a heavy bubble slate on Monday, but Wake Forest and Northwestern were clinging to shreds of hope. How'd they do? I'll go ahead and tell you, not so well. We'll get to that and much more coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're plumbing, you're into HVAC or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with the complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you're going to find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. You need help with an order? Well, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you're always going to talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, check out their free Trade Master program, which offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. So join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. Again, that's supplyhouse.com. And what do you know? Parker is still here with me. This dude is such a mensch. He said, you know what? Let's hang around. Let's do the whole show. So this is not just a Houston Cougs expert tonight. Parker Ainsworth is hanging out with me for the rest of the show. Parker, we just talked about the back end of Big Monday. Let's go back to the front end, the ACC game, where Wake Forest was in Cameron Indoor Stadium to try to salvage their bubble hopes, which had just been obliterated as they had recently added a Q2 loss and 2 Q3 losses to their resume, which is no bueno for a team that was already no good in a lot of the predictive metrics. And Parker, I don't mind saying things did not go well for Wake, and that's probably putting it kindly. Duke wins 93-60 on senior night. FanDuel had it Duke by 20.5, and it wasn't even a concern, man. And so for Duke, they clinch at least a share of the ACC. Clemson and Louisville are both still in the picture there. Look, Parker, I think Wake was already done, now even more so. Listen to this stat line from Cooper Flagg and tell me your reaction. I just laugh every time I look at this. 28 points on 10 of 16 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3, 5 of 6 from the free throw line, 8 boards, 7 assists, just 1 turnover, 3 blocks, and 2 steals. My man, that is absurd. Tell me about it.
Sounds like he's going to be a great Houston Rocket. Well, we might talk about Houston sports here. No, on a serious note, it's just different. And he's the guy that you just hope you kind of contain and you shut everyone else down, right? Got to watch Duke because they seem to be tagged in with like the early game or the late game when Houston kind of like bookends them or whatever sometimes, like they did on Monday night on ESPN. And it's really like you just kind of hope you shut down everyone else. Can you keep the guards out of the paint and let, like, hey, if Cooper get 30, it's not 60, right? Like we'll live, you know. I'm sure Sampson's something more complicated for him, but that's my 2 cents in watching him because it's just tremendous.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're right. Like, easier said than done because Con Knippel is insanely good. Tyrese Proctor was back in this game after missing the last one. Still no Malik Brown, and I think that's a critical piece for Deke, Parker, because he is their best, despite Kaman Malawach's size. Malik Brown is their best interior defender. And so I think it might not matter here down the stretch of the regular season, maybe even in the ACC tournament. But come NCAA tournament time, when they get outside the ACC, they're going to need Malik Brown back. So we're going to keep our eyes on that with Duke. But, man, they're absolutely rolling now. And we'll see. I mean, it's kind of funny. As much as they've dominated the Duke, dominated the ACC, Andy and I talked about this on Monday's show. But this is the one conference, along with, I guess, the Big Ten, where it hasn't been clinched yet. The Cougs have clinched the Big 12. St. John's has clinched the Big East. And what am I missing out on? Auburn has already clinched the SEC. And so we're just waiting to see if Carolina can knock off Duke on Saturday and if Clemson and Louisville can keep pace. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this closes out. Parker, one other game of note, we'll say, on Monday night, not Big Monday, but it was running concurrent with the Houston and Kansas game on FS1. We had UCLA at Northwestern. The Wildcats holding on to, similar to Wake, a shred of hope on the bubble. And Parker, the Fightin' McBruins almost pooped this thing away. They hold on 73-69, but listen to this stuff. UCLA is up 14 with 2 minutes and 15 seconds left in the game. Northwestern somehow goes on this 13-0 run. They cut it to 1 with 21 seconds to go. They had the ball down 2, so a chance to tie or take the lead. There's a turnover, and then eventually they commit an intentional foul. There's a bunch of free throws, and UCLA hangs on by 4. Dude, this is almost disaster for the Bruins, who are in that 6-7 seed range right now with Kansas. Did you catch any of this game, or were you so in on what Houston and Kansas were doing that you didn't see it?
No, you sent me the notes, and so I went back and checked it out. And so the clips are crazy because like the energy is palpable off the screen, but the like game thing when you watch on the box score, it's like the window gets closer and closer and closer. It's like what happened there? And I will say, obviously it's classic Big Ten basketball with UCLA, but jokes aside, it does feel like UCLA like thought they had it. They're like already looking like they got to win a couple of these, right? And so like it's almost like we're looking forward to the next one because they do need a few of them to get into a decent seed or have a real shot at making any noise in a couple weeks. So I mean obviously if they're in there with Houston, I'll know a lot more about the matchup individually. But UCLA, it felt so again. Houston, it felt like when Houston came back against Kansas and really. I mean, it was close there. 1 point with 21 seconds to go. Don't quite have the Malik Wilson 3 there at that point. But that's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah, very much so. For UCLA, they have now literally flip-flopped win-loss for the last 7 games. Beat Penn State, lost to Illinois, beat Indiana, lost to Minnesota, beat Ohio State, lost to Purdue. Now they beat Northwestern. So clearly that means they're going to end the regular season by losing at home to USC. Parker, I think that's what this pattern tells us. And then Northwestern has an away game at Maryland. If there's any shred of a hope left before the Big Ten tournament, that'd be a good thing to go in and knock off Derek Queen, who's an absolute stud. Oh, by the way, Parker, we got 2 ranked games tonight, and I am very excited for them because we get the number 1 team in the land on the road in College Station, Auburn. Number 1 at number 22, Texas A&M. 9 Eastern on ESPN, unfortunately running concurrently with the other ranked game tonight. ESPN, FanDuel has it Auburn -5.5. Denver Jones is questionable. That other ranked game going at the same time. Number 23 BYU is at a now seemingly healthy number 10 Iowa State. 9 Eastern on ESPN2. FanDuel has it Cyclones -9.5. Parker, what are your big thoughts on either or both of these games?
Well, it's funny because if you count the exhibition with A&M, Houston's actually seen all 4 of these teams, so I got to see them each a little bit more up close as far as like getting to scout them a little bit. A&M plays a style of basketball that I think can beat Auburn. I don't think they've got the horses, right? Like they can definitely muck up the game, make it ugly.
That's true,
right? Those kinds of things. I mean, that's what Buzz does, right? I just don't think they quite have the like high end talent to like Janai Broom's going to get his, right? Like it's, at some point that's just going to be what it is.
Especially because he didn't on Saturday. He just had a fine game Saturday.
Well, and good players bounce back. We talked about Petaway to start the show too. Like he's that kind of an athlete that could have a takeover moment. Obviously, Houston knows that as well as anyone. But I would anticipate that won't be an ugly. It's in College Station. That's a weird place. Iowa State's really good, and so that BYU game, BYU plays an interesting style. They shoot a lot of threes, and that can make a game kind of feel awkward and weird. But Iowa State, when they're all healthy and ready to go, I mean, that backcourt, Lipsy's tough as nails. Momcilovic is just a weird like who covers what? Like he's a weird guy to match up with. That's a tough team. Those are, I mean, frankly, it's like you mentioned, it's almost a shame these are both on at the same time. Like
I know. Split screen, baby. Where's your YouTube TV at, Parker?
YouTube TV, yeah, fine. YouTube TV, yeah, exactly.
Man, it's going to be good. Yeah, I'm with you. Like Todd Pettiford could be a big difference for Auburn in that first game that we were talking about there. There's always the Wade Taylor fourth up and down for Texas A&M. Which version of him will we get? That might go a long way to determining it. But I'm with you. I expect a big game from Janai Broom in that one. Chad Baker-Mazara is probably going to get his as well. Dude, what intrigues me about this Big 12 game, BYU has played themselves right off the bubble and into a very safe and secure position in the NCAA tournament. And Kevin Young, man, he's got this thing rolling right now. I'm really happy for the Cougars to see what they're doing. I know your fellow mascot school, you got to be some sort of happy for them. But man, Iowa State, we've seen what they can be when they are fully healthy. And now that Curtis Jones is back, now that Sean Gilbert is back, now that Milan Momcilovic is back as well, I think we could see the version of them that we saw had a double-digit lead on Auburn in Maui, right? They and Texas Tech, I think, are these kind of teams that because of these injuries they've dealt with in the Big 12, people are like, are they really as good as – yes, absolutely. These are both Final Four capable teams. meaning Texas Tech and Iowa State. So really thinking the Cyclones could hold on at home here, but man, BYU has a great chance to keep improving their stock. Anything else on either of these, Parker, before we keep trucking to some bubble territory?
Yeah, I would just say that with Iowa State, Houston was their first loss with Momslovich in the lineup since that Auburn game, and they were missing the backcourt. Right? I mean, that tells you a little bit about what they're dealing with. Ames is one of the. I mean, Houston's lost 4 regular season games since entering the Big 12 conference games since entering the Big 12. One of them was at Ames. It's a tough place to play, right? I mean, I don't know how much FanDuel advice you want to give out there, but like those kind of things led me to think like, I would take place got that one.
Hilton Magic, baby. It's a thing. It's absolutely real for sure. Yeah, I guess Houston played both Texas Tech and Iowa State with those 2 guards down for each of them. So nice little break there for you guys.
Yeah, well, and again, we won the conference in more than one game or so. So, like, I guess technically they could have sustained either one of them. But yeah, no, it's nice to be on the other side of that health thing this year.
That's a good word. Yeah, the Cougs were owed one of those for sure. All right, Parker, you know what time it is, baby? Let's get bubbly. We're gonna do that in just a second. Oh my goodness. We've talked about these top of the rankings matchups on Tuesday night, but Parker Ainsworth, we've got, by my count, 13 bubble games of some variety on Tuesday night, 2.5 of which are double bubble situations. We got Baylor at TCU. Yes, Baylor has slid back into bubble territory. Nebraska at Ohio State. And then the half is because Arkansas is at Vandy. I think Vandy's safe. But, they've been in that bubble conversation, so we'll count it as well. So give me 2.5 double bubble situations. Parker, I'm going to just slog through these. I'm not even going to name times or stations or FanDuel lines. I just want to give the games, and I want to get 1 or 2 from you that you are most interested and excited about to see what happens tonight. So here we go. Chronological order, deep breath. Georgia at South Carolina. Georgia coming off of that beatdown of Texas over the weekend. North Carolina at Virginia Tech. Carolina's won 5 in a row against subpar competition. They're trying to make it 6 before their date with Duke on Saturday. Texas, can they rebound from that ugly loss? They're at number 25 Mississippi State tonight. First of our double bubble situations, Baylor at TCU. Baylor, they're fine if they keep winning, but we'll see. Villanova has kind of played themselves back into bubble conversation. They're at Georgetown. West Virginia, I think, is in great shape, but they don't want to go lose at Utah tonight. Utes are actually favored at FanDuel in that game. Syracuse at SMU. SMU's on the wrong side of things right now, but they're favored by 12.5 at home. San Jose State at Colorado State. The Rams are coming up. That Mountain West school, keep your eyes there. Boise State at Air Force. Boise struggled on the road this weekend at an inferior opponent. They shouldn't do that again. Indiana at Oregon. Can they get this one out on the West Coast? Ducks by 6.5. Our next double bubble situation, Nebraska at Ohio State. The Cornhuskers are falling apart lately. Ohio State needs to hang on to things. And then our almost double bubble game, Arkansas at Vandy, for some reason, tipping off at 10 Eastern in Nashville. Ugh. And then San Diego State at UNLV. The Aztecs should take care of this one. It tips off at 11 Eastern on CBS Sports Network. Parker, there we go. I'm out of breath. What you got? What of those games are you most excited about?
So obviously I'm going to watch the Big 12 games in my own way, but I will say, to stay outside the Big 12 for a second, the top tier talent on Texas being on the bubble here playing at Mississippi State is interesting to me, just because they do have so much talent, and in a very burnt orange fashion, they seem to be finding a way to make their way to the bubble here. I like to remind people that's the program that had Kevin Durant and lost in the first weekend. And then obviously also we're talking about Houston, like San Diego State, it's one of those handful of teams that actually has beaten Houston this year. And so you kind of hope that for your own resume's sake ends up being a tournament team. And so interested to see how that one goes late night. I don't want to stay up all the way to watch the whole thing and tip it off at 11 o'clock Eastern. Speaking of late night, Arkansas is a bubble team. I cover Houston all year long, but how early on did you realize that Cal and Arkansas was going to be a bubble team, Isaac?
Pretty early. I mean, part of it was it hadn't come together in the way, you know how sometimes the Calipari Kentucky teams, it was a great collection of talent, but the team took a while to materialize every now and again. That's how this one's been, but it feels like they've been really playing better. I thought two things that really tipped it for me was Boogie Fland is maybe their best individually talented player. He went out for the season, and at that point, John L. Davis, who came over from FAU after everybody vacated there as Dusty May left, that's when Nelly Davis really started coming alive. And then they went into Rupp and they knocked off the Wildcats. And I thought those kind of two things have been the impetus for Arkansas playing better of late. Obviously, they lost over the weekend in a complete no-show, a complete egg-laying situation there. But Arkansas, it's kind of been that for a lot of the season. And so the hope is that they're going to be able to figure it out maybe down this last game or two here and then into SEC play. But yeah, I mean, it was really, Parker, I guess if I had to put a moment on it, it's the beginning of SEC play where they lost those 5 in a row. I was like, oh, Arkansas ain't ready because they were 11-2 in non-con play. And so I thought they had it, but boy, the beginning of SEC play is the answer.
Fell apart. All right. I've talked too much on the bubbly. I stayed away from Big 12 games. I know like people probably expected me to stick on those. I'm interested in Baylor because Houston plays Baylor this weekend too, I should point out. But what bubbly tastes the best to you out of this? Because this is quite a lineup, a lot to choose from.
It really is. I'm really intrigued by the Nebraska at Ohio State game, that double bubble, because Ohio State is another team that I really liked preseason. They had a lot of great talent. They've been up and down, as you expect, in a full-time first-year coach. Coach Diebler obviously stepped in late last season. But Nebraska, I kind of hate it for them because they've kind of crumbled a little bit down the stretch here, and they're kind of tanking on that. So I'm watching out for that. And so that's going to be really interesting. And then the other is as the host of Locked On Tar Heels, obviously I'm going to be locked in on them up in Blacksburg. There's a very big potential trap situation for them. They've won 5 in a row, but now they got Duke ahead, but they got to get so locked in on beating Virginia Tech, because if you don't beat Virginia Tech, the Duke game doesn't matter because now you've taken on a second quad 3 loss. And so these Tar Heels really, really need to be honed in on that. And then maybe the one outside of all that I'm most interested in, unfortunately, Parker, is going on at the exact same time as those two ranked on ranked games we talked about, is Indiana at Oregon. Indiana has really seemed to circle the wagons and come alive since the Mike Woodson retirement announcement has happened. They've been playing really well, but man, going out to Oregon's going to be tough on them. If they can get that, man, I think Indiana might be pretty safe and secure there. And so that's the other one I'm going to be watching pretty close. And that one will be on FS1. So that's nice. You don't have to tune into Peacock or anything.
The streaming sites can be tricky, Isaac.
I know, because YouTube TV, I got my quad box going. But then with Peacock, I'm like, I guess I got to go phone and computer and all this stuff as well. It's a whole situation. Parker, so there's our bubble talk. A couple other quick notes, folks, on our way out. On Monday, the Cousy Award finalists dropped 5 of them. We got 3 SEC guys, a Big East, and a Big Ten. Mark Sears of Alabama, Walter Clayton of Florida, Cam Jones from Marquette, Braden Smith from Purdue, and Zakai Ziegler from Tennessee. Parker, I know we're going really long here, but really quickly, who you going with for this thing? If you had to pick today.
So obviously, if I'm going with a non-Cougar guy, it's hard to not root for 5'9" Zakai Ziegler, right? Like just, I mean, in a very Barnesian kind of way, a very tough guy point guard. And again, maybe it's because I'm not very tall. I'm taller than 5'9", but I guess I just sympathize a little bit with the, like just the fight and toughness of the little guy at Tennessee. Tennessee has had a great year, and he's kind of the impetus of a lot of what makes them go. Defensive Player of the Year last year. So like anyway, I think that he's got my he's my favorite. I don't know, but you obviously I think probably going a different direction.
I think so. I gotta have to go with Braden Smith, man. Like what he's done to step up in the post Zach Edey era for the Boilermakers is really crazy stuff. I think for me, I know there's all the Mark Sears, but he's not been as strong this year, I think, as he was last year. And so for me, it probably comes down. I mean, he's right there on the tails, but I'd have to go Braden Smith or Cam Jones, and ultimately I'm going to go with Braden Smith for that one. But man, I absolutely love it when we start getting all these awards going. It's fun conversations and great. All right, Parker, last thing, we'll get out of here. Conference tournament action is underway. The A-Sun started on Sunday. It kept on going Monday and is in action. Again, 3 conferences are starting up today. Tuesday, we got Sunbelt, Horizon, and Patriot League. Coming up this weekend, the Ohio Valley will be the first conference to hand out their automatic qualifier. And as a remember, y'all, 31 AQs now. We're down 1 from 32 because there is no Pac-12 this year. That means 1 more at-large bid handed out this year. That's good for all these bubble teams. All right, Parker Ainsworth, brother, you're the man. Thank you so much for joining me. Love all the Parker Ainsworth shoe collection behind you. For those watching, it always brightens my day. I absolutely love it. Folks, make sure you go check out all his work on Locked On Cougs and the Big 12 Squad Show. All sorts of great stuff there. Really thankful for my brother Parker and to be teammates here on the Locked On Network. If you've not subscribed to our show on video and audio, make sure you do so now so you don't miss a second in the lead up to the NCAA tournament and Champ Week and everything that's going on there. If you've not joined the Locked On College Basketball Discord, man, you are missing out, my friends. You want to get in on that right now. The link is in the show notes, absolutely free to join. As always, we want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes. Shouts to Mick Bruin and holding on tonight on Monday night. We'll talk again tomorrow. Andy Patton and our guy Leaf Tulane will be with you to lead the way. But until then, peace.